than these guys, so the bios get longer as you go on. We should have sent the short version, apparently. I am director of an organization that's also a nonprofit. It's called the Center for Citizen Diplomacy. It's now a division of a larger organization, as you mentioned, and thank you you did great with the name, Pixar Global. Everyone always asks. We've recently gone through a big rebranding and this whole remessaging through our merger, so good job. But our parent organization is now in Washington, D.C. So as we merge, a little bit is going to change with regards to internships and opportunities with our organization, and a lot of those internships will likely come from D.C. in the future. So if that is someplace you want to be for an internship, that's something you should talk to us about. As far as what the Center for Citizen Diplomacy does, we were founded in Des Moines about 7 years ago, so we're also not too old, a fairly young organization yet. And it was really as a result of a lot of organizations getting together who provide opportunities for cultural engagement, cross-cultural, purposeful engagement at a person-to-person level. So these organizations are like Sister Cities International, United Nations, these organizations sitting here, organizations that help you home host students or visitors from another country, study abroad, higher education institutions. So any way that you can engage at a people-to-people level with someone from another country or another culture, those are the types of organizations that we promote, and what the center was put in place to do is really unite those organizations with a common voice towards this movement to more purposeful global engagement. Another term, is interchangeable as global citizenship, citizen diplomacy. These terms are all mean kind of the same thing, where it's purposefully engaging with someone from another country at a one-on-one level. So there are a lot of ways to do that. There are a lot of ways right in this room to do that on this campus. You don't have to travel to do that. And the more that you can engage across cultures right here at home, and I'm sure many of you already have, that you can be prepared to do that abroad later or work in international organizations, the more you can do, the better. So get involved in those student associations, intercultural activities. You're already well on your path as, international studies majors already, so you're way ahead of me when I was in college. So Matt, my colleague, is over here looking dapper, and he is going to be doing the little workshop session right after this, so I'm not going to tell you a lot about the center because he's going to tell a lot more about that as well, and what we do and what does citizen diplomacy look like and how you get involved. So I'll leave that to him, but I'll certainly take questions. Hopefully you'll all stay for that. So I'll take a little bit different approach. I'll give you my kind of snapshot of my own path to how I ended up here, which is not a very straight path. It's definitely a wandering route. And I don't know, I always think, well, I don't know that I'm the best example of how to get a career in international diplomacy or international studies. At the same time, I think it's a great example because, in college, I think you think you have to have all these steps laid out and you know where you're going, and it can change along the way, and that's okay, and I still ended up here. So when I was in college at UNI, actually when I was first going there, I didn't know really what I wanted to do. I don't know if any of you have had that experience. You probably all knew exactly what you wanted to do, right? And where you're going next. But growing up, I had varied interests. I liked a lot of different subjects, so it was kind of open-ended for me. So I thought, UNI is a good business school, probably going to some type of business. But I was taking classes from business to biology to design and architecture, so I was all over the board. I actually graduated with a degree in design in the human environment, which is essentially interior design. I had a business emphasis, and I worked for about 18 years in the design and architecture field, in project management and design, kind of, moved up several levels and moved around to Chicago, back to Iowa, Cedar Rapids, Quad Cities, Des Moines. And really moved from design into management, and then into kind of new business development, so helping create partnerships with architects to really build spaces. So that's really my background. I did that for about 18 years. But along the path, there's this parallel path outside of your work and career where you're really exploring other interests. This is, life outside of work. And about, late 20s, I guess, I was in the Quad Cities. I met someone who would become a really great friend of mine. Her name was Jen. And we started traveling together. And I had, gone on vacations as a kid and, but never out of the country. So she had studied abroad when she was at college here in Iowa. And I've actually studied abroad for an entire year, so she had been a couple different places in Europe and was a really great relationship builder and maintainer. So she had built these relationships around the world. And when we started traveling together, then we would reconnect with all these people that she had met there and really just had a great experience because we already knew people on the ground, had friendships formed there. And this way of traveling really became a passion for me. So I don't know if any of you guys are studying abroad or plan to, or maybe have already traveled abroad, or maybe you're international students. I don't know the mix here, but that's a really great way to get some of that global perspective while you're in college, or find someone who's done it and go with them after college. But so we did a lot of traveling probably for those next 10 years. After about 18 years in the design field, I just decided I was ready to explore a completely new career. Not sure this is for everyone, but I just decided I have a lot of interests. It's at this point where I want to make a change. And this was, to me, going to be a wholesale change. Like, I was in the design field, I was in corporate, working for a corporation, not a nonprofit. Through design, I had worked with government entities, corporations, healthcare entities, universities, because all of my design work was commercial, not residential. So I had learned a lot about how those different sectors and different folks work and get things done. So that was helpful. But I did not know which interest I wanted to pursue yet. And so that was about the same time that I met my now significant other, Tom, and just started bouncing some ideas around with him. He lives on acreage outside of Des Moines. So he said, he was still in the love fog. He didn't know what he was saying, but he's like, why don't you take some time off and take a sabbatical this summer and spend time with me out in the country on the farm. And he actually owns a coffee company. He doesn't farm, but it's kind of a hobby for him. And I loved farms growing up, and this sounded great to me. So I took a sabbatical that summer, and that gave me the opportunity to really explore things that I would have not had time to explore if you're working full-time. It's hard to, unless you're making a move within your chosen field, it's really hard to explore new ideas. So luckily I had the opportunity to do that, and took about 6 months off, or that was my intention. It ended up being a little less because that summer was when the Center for Citizen Diplomacy was founded in Des Moines. And I read an article once I started exploring, in between gardening and like collecting cats on the farm, I started looking at ways to volunteer. And I thought volunteer would be a great way to find out about some other careers and see if they would really be right for me instead of entering into another 20-year track. So I read an article about the Center for Citizen Diplomacy. It was just founded. I called the director and said, hey, this idea really resonates with me. I've been traveling, I've been connecting around the world with all of these people and learning great things, and I didn't know it had a name. It's called Global Citizen Diplomacy. So she took a meeting with me, we went for coffee, I learned all about it, and then I just said, if you need a volunteer, I'm available this summer, and I'd love to volunteer for your events. So she took me up on that, and I volunteered for a couple months, and then I got hired more in the communications. I had some interest in design, as you can tell, and not only interior but graphic design. So that's kind of where I was placed. But I would echo these guys. Misty and Cora's comments about being at a small nonprofit, you really do everything. So you get a really broad range of knowledge, and you will be able to really work on important projects because you are like the only staff there, so you get to do it all. At the same time, there are frustrations with that, so not everyone, there's not going to be a lot of processes and documentation in place sometimes. You're scrambling for money. But it's a great way to be with a startup and learn and be involved, be closely involved with making something work. So yeah, I started out that way. My executive director retired a couple of years ago and merged, and here I am. So that was my winding path to where I got here today. And hopefully there's some lessons you can learn from that. And 20 years down the road, don't be afraid to take a leap.
Thank you.